sacrifice balance or early termination fee less trade-in. Monthly charges, usage, and other restrictions apply. See store for details.
The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliate stations coast to coast present
Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue.
No-hitter for Arietta.
Discussing baseball, good drinks, and food.
Or clear for a minute so I can write down the damn time.
It just got weird.
With Ted Hicks.
Everybody wants to be Bartolo.
Todd Vandenberg.
The handsomest man on the entire goddamn tour.
And Lee Vowell.
Folks, look around. Anyone who's not singing in the choruses is a racist.
Every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. on the Happy Hour Network.
And welcome to Baseball Beer and Barbecue with Ted, Todd, and Lee. Like us on the Facebook, follow us on the Twitter at Baseball Beer BBQ, and read us on our blog site, baseballbeerbbq.com, and get even more info at thehappyhournetwork.com. We will talk in a few minutes with Michael O'Neill, co-chair of the New York Green Party, about Jill Stein in the 2016 presidential election, and a bit later with Rob Kowal, sports director at Sports Talk 1240. And we're excited. Ted has some big news about that. Who has a documentary about his father's softball team. Trust me, you will want to hear about this. So, Ted, who else do we have to thank on this wonderful morning?
There's so many different people to thank, but you can hear us on NGSC Sports, I-95 Sports Network, Back Sports Page, RS Sports, XRP Radio, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Arena Sports Network, and Todd would like to thank someone personally.
From the bottom of my heart. At CJ Computers NC, Computer Repair NC, 919-653-8496. They will fix your computer. They will fix your cat. They will fix your car. They will fix your life. CJ Computer Repair at CJ Computers NC, 919-653-8496. Actually, they'll just fix your computer, but that's good enough.
Well, actually, I don't need a computer fix anymore, as I've gotten my new Acer Aspire. So this part of the program, I guess, is sponsored by Acer Aspire. So I have two guys, very special guys in my life. Ted Hicks is one of them, of course, and my brother-in-law. Who works independently in Seattle, does a lot with Amazon and stuff. So I asked both those guys, hey, which computer should I buy? And they almost both said the exact same computer. So got this computer on Wednesday. I'm using it for the show, so it's almost like we have a little new studio. So so far it's working great. And, of course, big props to Ted. I won't say why on the air. I'm not sure if we're supposed to talk about that. But anyway, saved me several $100s. Thank you, Ted. You do not owe anything for BTR for years, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, stop.
So that's why I like
not what
my
you
guys
said last
today.
night, Ted.
I know.
We both have the same joke. So, I hate to change the subject abruptly, but we did lose another icon, 2016, Muhammad Ali. Todd, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, we'll talk more in depth about it later, because obviously we could do a 6-hour show about this, which ESPN basically did. I was just going to sleep last night, checked the news, really wish I hadn't, because I was up to 4 o'clock, literally 4 o'clock this morning, watching ESPN, because I was so captivated by them pulling people from everywhere at 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern time and waking them up and say, hey, boom. And it's just a gentleman who goes by Barry Obama on Twitter, and of course that's not the president, posted 2016, the taker of icons. And, we've lost so many big names. But to me, Ali is by far the biggest. I mean, the man transcended sports so much to the point that it's just ridiculous. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who know his name, who know about him for what he has done to promote peace, much later in his life, and not just later, but he became such an ambassador for the world, to the world. They might not even known that he was a boxer. Probably, and I guarantee you, a lot of them have never seen any of his fights. I mean, the man absolutely transcended the sports world. It's, to me, we want to be entertaining, so we want to be light. But man, this is just devastating to me. I was 10 when he took his stand against the Vietnam War, and said, no, I'm not going to be drafted because, my people here, speaking of African Americans, they're being oppressed. Why should I go fight, dark people over there? And, at the time, I was 10 and kind of like, wow, that doesn't seem right. But just within a couple of years, I figured out, yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, he stuck by guns. He lost 43 months of the prime of his career, 25 through 27, for what he believed in. Gave up millions and millions and millions of dollars. Because, let's face it, I mean, they would have inducted him, and he would have been going around the country doing prize fights. I mean, they wouldn't have just sent him off. Well, they might have because, government can be kind of stupid. But most likely, he would have just been doing exhibitions to promote the military. And he wasn't going to be a tool for that. And by the way, the Supreme Court overturned, and most people realize, but they overturned the decision that conviction for draft evasion 8-0 because Thurgood Marshall recused himself because he was actually part of the Justice Department in the case. So they unanimously said, no, that was wrong, that they denied his status as a conscientious objector, and which was ridiculous that it ever came to that. But he absolutely stood up for his beliefs, and his beliefs we all believe in God. Doesn't matter what you call him or her or it. We all have beliefs. We're all brothers. I mean, what a powerful message. So that's, to me, it's just a huge, huge loss.
Ted?
So I'm a part of several different group chats. One group chat with two of these gentlemen that I share the airwaves with, but to another group chat of some other friends. I wrote this morning because I was asleep, and when Lee and Todd were texting back and forth, I was already done, But I said I woke up this morning heart filled with joy. No more physical struggles for the champ. He's moved on. We'll continue to celebrate his life. He had no fear. The greatest. And boxing was only a small piece of it. We're gonna talk, and there's everyone's gonna talk about, when you say the greatest, hands down, everyone knows who you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
This one is the GOAT, that one is the GOAT, but when you say the greatest, it states it clearly. And the fact that he believed something, he spoke about it, he stood his ground. And the same language he used in the 60s is the same language he used in the 70s and in the 80s, and when Parkinson's took him over. There's so much to say about one specific person. He's an icon. He's an international icon. But to be mostly the face of Parkinson's disease, lighting the cauldron in 1996, up there shaking, people unsure of if he's going to be able to do it. But we knew he would. So with that, I'm a little caught up right now. Totally a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll definitely talk more about this, in the second hour of the show. Absolutely, because I kind of want to hit on some things you guys said. But Todd, I believe it is time for our first guest. You want to tell all our millions of listeners about them?
Terrific. Yes. Really changing gears. We now welcome Michael O'Neill, co-chair of the New York Green Party, to the program. Michael can be found on Twitter at Michael E. O'Neill and on the interwebs at counterpower.org. Michael, welcome to the show.
Ali Presente. I was listening to you guys, wrapping up that segment, and absolutely, he lived an extraordinary life of extraordinary struggle and courage in the face of war and racial discrimination, and there's a lot to remember today.
Yeah, we were discussing just pre-productions. Like we could do a 6-hour show and just strictly on Muhammad Ali. But we'll move on to a smaller world, politics. First question for you is going to be kind of a softball. Now, in basic terms, that even a 5-year-old can understand, what is the Green Party's platform, and how is it different from the Democrats' agenda?
The Green Party stands for people, planet, and peace over profit. And we have 4 pillars of our movement going back, almost 40 or 50 years now since the first Green Party started in Europe. And we call for grassroots democracy, which means real participation in our political system at every level, not just voting, every year, every couple of years, or every 4 years. We call for nonviolence, which is more than just the absence of obvious conflict, but it means taking on the systems of oppression that silence people and restrict their participation in public life and in political processes. It means the violence. It means ending the violence that's inflicted by poverty on billions of people every day. We call for social justice, which means looking at all the ways of gender, race, sexual orientation, sexual expression, religion, all the different ways that people are intersectionally oppressed in our society and around the world. And we call for ecological wisdom, and that's probably what we're most known for as the Green Party, is that we call for a radical reorientation of our society so that we are living in harmony with the planet, that we are not constantly trying to exploit nature as just a resource to be seized, but that we are accepting the limits of our biosphere and that we are trying to work in harmony with that. And we're different from the Democratic Party structurally because we do not take any money from corporate lobbyists. We do not take any money from super PACs. That is built into the DNA of our organization. And in the Green Party of New York, we do not cross-endorse Democrats, unlike some other so-called progressive third parties in this state. So we are different both in our platform, but I think more importantly, we are structurally different because we have committed ourselves to financial independence from Wall Street and the corporations and a capitalist system that has completely run amok. And that financial independence is what safeguards our political independence.
And again, I really want to thank you for taking the time out. I know you've got to be incredibly busy in this part of the campaign, so thank you again so much for joining us. So what drew you personally to the party, and what barriers have you encountered in your work for the Green Party?
I am a proud, unrepentant Ralph Nader voter from 2000. I was 20 years old in the year 2000, and Ralph Nader came and spoke to where I was going to college in Cleveland at the time. I had been aware of Ralph Nader's work for a while, and it was that whole moment of the social justice movement that had been building. We'd had the battle in Seattle at the World Trade Organization leading up to that. There was all of this consolidation of media that now seems very quaint, that we were worried about some of the mergers at the time of like AOL Time Warner and CBS Viacom, and now the corporate media and corporate internet institutions we have now completely dwarf those mergers. But so seeing that you had two parties which were both in service to a Wall Street agenda that was not in accordance with what our planet needed and what our people were demanding for. And the idea of creating something new and creating something that again structurally was taking out independence from this corporate system that had captured so much of our political process. And that since then, I did a lot of work in what you might call issue activism, working with different groups on the environment, certainly in opposition to the war, a war that Hillary Clinton voted for when she was in the U.S. Senate, that a lot of Democrats voted for in the invasion of Iraq, and also the way we invaded and continued to occupy Afghanistan. But at the end of the day, what brought me back to wanting to get involved with the Green Party was that I worked with all these groups that did amazing work, whether it's on the environment or for worker rights or for racial justice or for opposing exploitative real estate development in New York City, for example. But at every level of government, you'd have these fantastic activists who have the plan, right? They've written out their white papers. They have a plan for how to move forward in a more just and equitable way. But then you're just waiting for an elected Democrat to be willing to be seen in the same room as you. And so seeing this divorce, seeing this schism between issue politics and electoral work, we've got a lot of great leftists and progressives doing issue work. But if you're not taking power, if you're not getting elected, then you're beholden to the people who are. And the people who are in power, who are elected, the vast majority of elected positions in this country are part of this duopoly system that's been captured by Wall Street. And so I've always looked to the Green Party as an activist party and a party of activists that has sought to unite that split where we're active not just on Election Day, but every day in the movements, on the streets, and at the ballot box, and in the courtrooms, trying to use all the tools that we have available to fight the power, basically.
Michael, how you doing? This is Ted, located in Long Island, New York. The question I have for you is, what do you say to those who said the Green Party cost Al Gore the presidency in 2000?
Al Gore won the presidency in 2000. I think there's either a problem of history or math in that summary of events. Al Gore won the popular vote in Florida. The election was stolen by the Republican apparatus, including Jeb Bush, in Florida at the time. You got to wonder why Al Gore's campaign did not fight that more vigorously. There's a great labor activist and organizer and writer who I admire. Her name is Jane McAlevey, and I plug her whenever I can. She's got a book called Raising Expectations and Raising Hell. And Jane is not a Green. She, as someone involved in organized labor for over a decade, she helped run many Democratic Party campaigns. But her first-person account of how the Gore campaign and the DNC handled the recount situation in Florida is damning in terms of all the things that are wrong with the Democratic Party and its leadership, mainly in terms of how they view political struggle. And basically, they brought a knife to a gunfight, and they thought that they could just kind of seek legal means to address the issue. Meanwhile, the Republicans were actually doing street organizing and movement organizing. Granted, it was right-wing movement organizing in Florida to disrupt the recount process. And the Gore campaign was completely unequipped to deal with that, much as they were completely unequipped to handle much of the campaign. Gore lost his own home state of Tennessee, and he chose an odious war hawk as his running mate in Joe Lieberman. And, I think that personally that Gore and the Democratic National Committee conceded to the theft of an election so easily because the Democratic Party knows that it is complicit in election rigging throughout the country every year at the state and local level. And so that was a particularly egregious case of election theft in recent history, but by no means the only one. And, I look to I look at the hundreds of thousands of registered Democrats who voted for George W. Bush in Florida. you have this massively broken, corrupt system where a Supreme Court is handing a presidency over along partisan lines. And I think the massiveness of that corruption and the amount of power that we actually need to build as the left or as progressives to challenge that is very scary to people. And so it's easier to point the finger at Ralph Nader and the Green Party rather than to acknowledge that actually the one half of the duopoly that they thought was on their side actually isn't on their side and probably isn't even equipped to face the challenges that we face, even if they are on your side.
Wow, terrific answer. Do you think changing the name to the Progressive Green Party, as it's called in several countries, and of course in Missouri it's simply the Progressive Party, would that help convey the message that the Green Party is about more than the environment? That seems to be kind of a tag that it's hung with.
I worked in public relations and communications and branding for years, and while I have a lot of respect for what for what branding can do or for what a name or a logo can do as a tool in your toolbox, in the end, what really matters is our relationship to our members' relationship to their communities, the work that we're doing, how we represent ourselves and our candidates, and taking uncompromising, militant positions on the issues that matter most to working people. I mean, there's something about the name Pepsi that actually tells you what a Pepsi tastes like, or tells you, for that matter, that Pepsi is involved in the expropriation of water sources across the world, right? It's just a name. And so I think that our challenges as the Green Party for what we need to do to accomplish the kind of things that we aspire to run much deeper than our name. And if we're doing what we need to on the ground level in terms of organizing, training new leaders, putting everyday people in positions where they can build leadership and community within their cities and neighborhoods, then I think the name is going to be of tertiary or secondary concern at most.
Well, Michael, this is Lee. You've been fantastic. I do want to say I currently live in Tennessee. I've lived in Seattle. I consider myself a liberal. Ted lives in New York. Todd is in Florida. So I'm the one with the wasted vote, I guess, as the way the process is set up currently. However, I voted for Bernie in the primary, and I do plan to vote for Jill Stein when it comes to the presidential election, which is the same thing I did with state politics last time I voted Green. So, Jill Stein is the presumptive, I should call her Dr. Jill Stein because that's what she is the presumptive nominee of the Greens with 127 of the 202 delegates needed to win. The New York convention is next week. Will you endorse Dr. Stein, and what makes your candidate the best choice for the President of the United States?
Dr. Stein, she absolutely is my candidate, and I do endorse her. That's just, speaking as an individual Green. I am a supporter of Dr. Stein's campaign. And thank you for mentioning our upcoming convention that will be in Troy, New York, and that's available for all registered Greens in New York State to attend and vote at. And if you're a registered Green in New York and you're listening to this and you cannot attend the convention, you can actually cast an absentee ballot. We've extended the postmark deadline for that to Monday, basically. So you can go to gpny.org/ballot, and there's an online request form to have basically a link to a PDF sent to you. You print it, fill it out, get it in the mail by Monday, and your vote will be counted for your presidential candidate of choice. But getting back to your question, the reason I believe Dr. Stein is the best person to be the president of the United States is that she, in her record as a candidate and as an activist, has shown a commitment to real and radical action towards addressing the existential crises that we face today, namely the crises presented by catastrophic climate change. Dr. Stein nationally and we as Greens in New York State have campaigned on the dire need for a Green New Deal as a planet saver and a job creator to create a massive public works program to build all the solar panels, the wind turbines, everything else to create, to get us to 100% clean energy by 2030. That's the benchmark that we need to shoot for to avoid that 2 degrees Celsius increase or more that could set off the runaway cascading effects of global warming. And that is an emergency. That is a dire emergency. And you've got Republicans who won't admit to the existence of climate change, and then you've got Democrats who will admit that climate change exists, and they'll talk about it in their speeches, but they don't actually behave in office in accordance with that belief. They're not using the bully pulpit that is available to them as elected officials. They're not using whatever legislative or executive powers they have to take the real action that we need. And I think the problem with that is because Democrats, by and large, across this country are afraid to tax the rich. They're afraid to advocate taxing the 1% Wall Street and corporations to make them pay their fair share into the system so that we have the resources we need to start this Green New Deal, which will eventually end through the economic activity and the job growth that it will create. But to get it started, just like we had to get things started with the first New Deal, it's going to require rich people in this country and corporations which have been offshoring their profits in these tax havens around the world to start kicking in their fair share. And it's not only just her stance on climate change, but also, and this is, I think, a salient difference between Dr. Stein and Senator Bernie Sanders, is that Dr. Stein is the only candidate out there talking about how we need a drastic reduction in the military budget if we want to fund the kind of programs that both the Green Party and Bernie Sanders have been calling for in terms of the domestic agenda that we have a lot of overlap on. But Bernie's voted for a lot of military appropriations in his time, and he lobbied for the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter to be located in Vermont to get those sweet military jobs. And even the military doesn't like the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. Even people who are into fighter jets don't like the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, never mind pacifists like myself, or at least, anti-war people like myself. And if you want to have the money for a massive jobs program to, not just fight climate change, but also to renew our decaying infrastructure across the country, we've got to cut the military budget by at least half. And you can cut the military budget by half, and we'll still be spending more on war than any other country on the planet. So, yeah, that's why I'm for Dr. Stein, among myriad other reasons. And if there are any in particular you'd like me to discuss, I'd be happy to.
You know what? We got to have you back on. As far as I'm concerned, we definitely need to have you back on to discuss that if you can make it at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you being on. Where can you be found on social media? And if people want to get involved in the Green Party, how would they do that?
Well, in New York State, I'll speak to you first very briefly. We're at gpny.org. That stands for Green Party of New York. So it's gpny.org. You can reach me at michael@gpny.org. You can reach me on Twitter at Michael E. O'Neill. That's O'Neil. We're probably more active on Facebook than on Twitter at this point, so you can look for the Green Party of New York page on Facebook, along with a discussion group there. The Jill Stein campaign is located at jill2016.com. That's a nationwide campaign with volunteers in every state. And, of course, the Green Party of the United States, which will be having our national convention in Houston in August, which I'm really looking forward to. Looking forward to that 100% humidity, baby. So that's going to be August 4th through 7th. That's it. You can gpus.org or gp.org. Both of those URLs work. And, look for us on Facebook and Twitter. I think we're GPNY on Twitter.
Yep, you definitely are. I just followed you from my own Twitter, so I appreciate that. All right, well, thank you very much, and we'd love to have you on again in the future if you can make it. And thanks very much. Enjoy your weekend.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Enjoyed the barbecue this summer, along with your baseball and beer, and I would love to come on again. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. So, Ted, I believe we have a guest that you know on. Tell us a little bit about Rob.
We now welcome Rob Vowell to the show. Rob is the sports director of 1240 AM WGBB and also hosts a show called Sports Talk 1240. And he also has a great documentary about his father's softball team that you most definitely would want to hear about. I'm sure you're going to want to watch it after. So, Rob, thanks for being on.
Hey, Ted, thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. I guess, and they're already calling me, Rob. You know, you show up and the phone starts ringing. So tell me this. Before we get into the documentary, Beaver Doc, and Sports Talk 1240, I got to ask you a local homer question. Now, I believe you're a Yankees fan. I'm a Mets fan, but it's okay. We still like you. Has Matt Harvey turned it around, or at least enough to be the third best starter on the Mets?
Well, I think people get carried away. A couple of bad games. The media scrutiny now is so intense. If a guy has a bad start, everything seems to get blown out of proportion. I think the players and the coaches at the major league level tend to panic a little bit less than we as fans do. So there's no questioning Matt Harvey's talent as a pitcher. Of course, he's had a rough start here to begin the season, but I don't think there's really much to be concerned about. I think all the indicators that are there is his fastball has gone back up to where it usually is. I think it may be more than anything else, it might have been a mental thing with him. Who knows? But as far as if I were a Mets fan, I wouldn't be too worried about it. In terms of where he ranks in the pitching order for the Mets, I mean, they have so many great starters. I don't know that it matters so much. Right now, Syndergaard clearly seems to be the ace of the staff, but a few months down the road, he could struggle, and Harvey could pitch well. So I think they're all super talented, and I don't think really you have much to be worried about when it comes to Harvey. I think he's going to turn it around and have a solid year for them.
Gotcha. I'm guessing that, you know, him going out with supermodels every night, maybe that could kind of take your velocity away from your fastball a little bit, but that's another discussion because this is a family show. So we have to dip over to the NHL. Rob, you oversee a sports show. You're well ingrained with a radio station, but now we're going to add something different to your portfolio. You're the new commissioner of the NHL. You've thrown Gary Bettman out the door. What drastic changes would you make to the game to increase its appeal, or does it need any changes at all?
You know, I guess as commissioner, part of the job is to get word out about the game and spread the word of the game so more people enjoy it. Personally, I think sometimes you can try too hard to make changes and you kind of ruin the game itself. I think there's a core group of people that love hockey, that appreciate it for what it is. Years back, they tried to have the puck glow on TV so people could follow it better in the hopes that more people would watch the game. That didn't really work. So I think when you start to think about how to make other people enjoy the game, there's a difference between doing that and then changing the fundamentals of the game itself to try to appeal to more people. I think the game itself is fine. I think maybe you just need to show it to more people to be able to appreciate it. But when it comes to making changes to the game itself, I'm kind of not for that because I think that kind of ruins the integrity of the game a little bit. I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist when it comes to that. I'd be very hesitant to be making changes to the game itself.
Hey, Rob, this is Lee. I feel like because you're a radio guy, I should use a radio voice, but this is the best one I have, unfortunately. So, but I'm stuck here in Tennessee, a state that has an NFL team. You can't see the air quotes, and then a basketball team. You know, New York is a city that loves its sports, lots of sports, professional sports. Do you think Jeff Hornacek is the answer for the Knicks, and how likely will his concept of blending the triangle with the up-tempo pace work, and will Phil Jackson let him do that?
Well, first of all, I remember Hornacek as a player, and he was the epitome of the type of player you would want to root for, a guy that didn't maybe have tremendous amount of skill. Not that he wasn't skilled, but really a heart and soul, give it his all type of guy. And I think he's going to bring that same kind of attitude to the team when he coaches the Knicks. Now, I know Phil Jackson spent 6 to 12 hours, I think, speaking with him. And I think people, again, get caught up in this whole idea of running the triangle, and he's not a triangle guy, or is he a triangle guy? I think basketball is just, there are different ways to play the game. And I'm confident if Phil Jackson spoke with him at length, and apparently they had never spoken before, and he made such a good impression on him that he was ready to hire him so quickly, I think it's less about running the triangle and more about just fundamentally how he's going to run the team. So I'm looking forward to seeing him coach the Knicks. Again, I was such a fan of his as a player. I think he's going to do a great job with the Knicks.
Well, I think it'd be good for the NBA if the Knicks had a really good team every year, definitely. As far as your radio career, though, who's been your favorite interview? And you may not be able to say their name, but who's been the one who has not met your expectations?
Well, I hosted a hockey show at WGBB called New York Hockey Talk a while back, and so I interviewed a lot of former hockey players, most of which played when I was maybe in my 20s and remembered playing. So one of the guys I enjoyed talking to was a former goaltender for the Rangers by the name of Eddie Mio, who does some radio work in Detroit now. He was actually the best man at Wayne Gretzky's wedding. So he was a lot of high energy and just a really down-to-earth guy, and I really enjoyed talking to him. Mike Gartner was a great interview, former Ranger and more so a Capitals prolific goal scorer for the Capitals for many years. He was very well spoken. He had some great stories to tell. We went through his whole career. So he was another one that I really enjoyed talking to. There really were a number of guys. I had a chance to speak to Al Arbor, which was really an honor to get to talk to him. So those are some of the ones that stand out for me. In terms of some of the more difficult ones, I had a former Ranger by the name of Jan Eriksson on the show. He actually called in from Sweden, and as a kid, he was one of my favorite players, one of those just hardworking, no-nonsense guys, not a lot of flash, not a lot of flair, but always did the job. He would shadow guys like Mario Lemieux, not a big goal scorer, but really just a solid hockey player. So I was excited to have him on the show, but I don't know if it was a language barrier or what, but it was a very difficult interview, a lot of one-word answers, and it takes some skill to try to get information out of people as an interviewer sometimes, but it was very difficult with him, and it was a little disappointing, again, because I was such a fan of his, and it was through no fault of his own. I think he was just not that type of guy to toot his own horn or to talk very much. So while it was a thrill to talk to him, the interview itself was probably not as entertaining as I had hoped when I had gotten him to come on the show.
Hey, Rob, this is Todd. Gee, the guy calls from Sweden and you diss him. I was going to go with my radio voice.
I'm still a big fan.
I was going to go with my radio voice, but unfortunately it's Ted Baxter and that's TV, so this is just me. Move on to the documentary. We know your dad, of course, was the primary inspiration for creating the documentary, but were there any other driving forces behind this?
Yeah, well, I work full-time for Canon USA, marketing their professional products, and being an employee of Canon, I have an opportunity to use some of the gear to get a better understanding of how the gear works, and in turn, hopefully, help me be able to market those products better. So I started this reunion picnic at Wandsworth Park every year, where my father, growing up, worked for the phone company. He had a softball team in the late 70s, early 80s. They played on Randall's Island. I remembered going to the games as a kid. And so about 2008, I thought it would be fun. I had my own softball team at the time called the Beavers. So I thought it would be fun to kind of have like an old-timers day game. So I got in touch with all his old teammates, some of which he's still friends with today. Got them to come down to the park. They live in different parts of Long Island and Florida and upstate New York. And it was a real success. Everyone came down and hadn't seen each other for a while. We played like an old-timers game. So it became an annual thing for a few years. And actually, we're still getting together every year now. But around the third year in, I thought it would be a great idea to do this documentary. I'd never done one before. I still haven't since, but it was just something I really wanted to do. So I must have rented nearly $20,000 worth of cameras and lenses from Canon, put it in a tent at Wandsworth Park, basically shot all the interviews. I had someone help shoot some of the footage from the game. Then I took about a year of putting this thing together, whether it be getting royalty-free music to play, getting images and other assets, and it was a real challenge. It took me about a year's worth of editing to put this whole documentary together. It really makes you appreciate some of the documentaries you see on TV, which they have teams of people doing all these things, which is why other than the fact that it was my first documentary, it's not the cleanest put together piece you'll ever see. But I was involved in every step of the process, so it got me to really understand how a documentary is made, the whole editing process and shooting video. So I learned quite a bit doing it. And again, I hadn't made it initially for my father and his friends or teammates. So the following year at the next reunion, I put this about 35-minute documentary together. I had a projector in the park, big screen, and all the guys watched it, and they were blown away. And again, I'd done it for my father and his friends, so of course they're going to appreciate it. But I found it interesting afterwards what people thought of it. 'Cause for me, I know all the people in the documentary. To have someone watch it who doesn't know anyone and get their feedback, I found it very interesting to see that some people, I wondered if people could sit through the whole thing, because it really, if you don't know them, I wasn't sure how much it would resonate. But I did get some feedback from people that have watched it, and they said they've enjoyed it. So that's been a nice feeling to know that they've been able to enjoy it. But it was a real lot of fun to put together, and of course my father and all his teammates and former coworkers really enjoyed it.
Hey, Rob, I watched it yesterday, and it's very enjoyable. Absolutely. I mean, it's just very cool, the connections that the guys still have, and discussing who was the fastest and who was the best defender, and talking about how this guy had a cannon at third, and it's like he would purposely wait until he was just a step from the bag and then throw him out. I mean, it's a great piece of work, really. It is.
I appreciate that. I treated it, as if they were like a real team, like not that they weren't a real team, but like a professional team. So I don't know how that, but as someone that doesn't know these people from the hole in the wall, you were able to sit through it and enjoy it. So it's fascinating.
Oh, no, it wasn't like, I got to sit through this. I was just, I thought, I want to watch this, and it's like, I'm really glad I watched it. I'll probably watch it again, seriously, within a week, because it's really, really good. Walk us through the process of just creating that.
Well, basically, the day of the barbecue, I basically sat everyone down. I had a series of questions, 20 or so questions that I asked everyone at the barbecue. So after I did that, now we took B-roll footage, like people walking around in the park, old videos or old pictures or video from the game. So that was all the B footage. But all the A footage, which was basically all of the interviews, I basically transcribed each interview into words on an Excel sheet and had a tab, let's say, for each player and all their answers. And then you kind of start to fit it together like a puzzle piece. So I'm trying to tell a story, and I broke it up into chapters, and I kind of separated comments where they kind of were similar in what I wanted to talk about. And then I ended up with this set that I wanted to string together. Then it was a challenge just finding those video clips and cutting them all together. Then you just basically have your whole story. And then as you do that, you start to interject relevant pieces of B footage, whether it be photographs or footage from the game or someone in the park and so forth. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Greg Boyes that does some of the audio work at Sports Talk 1240 for me. He was nice enough to lend his services, and I'd give him scripts to read for me, so I'd have another audio clip to run as a narrator through it. So there were a series of things that I had to do. It was the first time I'd ever done it, so I'm sure someone who's a documentary maker has a much better system, but so it probably took me longer than it would if I'd done this for a living, let's say. But it was certainly an interesting process, and I learned a lot doing it. And working for Canon USA, I've gone to many trade shows where I've talked to filmmakers, because working at Canon, some of the products that I market are professional video cameras. So very often we work with other documentary filmmakers and so forth. So I've had a chance to talk to a lot of professionals through my job at Canon to kind of take tips away for myself in trying to put this together. So the whole thing was really just a learning experience. I had a lot of fun doing it. And if I had time, I would do it again. If I were retired, I could see myself just doing that, just going out, coming up with an idea for a documentary, doing film and putting it all together and trying to improve upon the last one. But it was a lot of fun.
And I will say personally, I do have a lovely Canon PowerShot. Very happy with it.
There we go.
Is there going to be a sequel, or do you have something in mind to do another documentary if you get time?
There are a couple of ideas I do have. I don't know that there'll be a sequel. I don't know what sequel I could do to this one. But I would like to do another documentary in the future. I have some ideas. I've reached out even to some people, but really the problem for me now is just time. Between my full-time job, doing the Sports Talk 1240, consulting for WGBB, My plate is full enough right now. So if at some point I find some time to do it, like I said, I would love to get back and do another one. And I do have some ideas, but basically right now it's just a matter of finding the time, because it's not the kind of thing you can kind of do halfway. And that's kind of the way I am with everything. Once I decide to go and do something, I'm full steam ahead. And until I'm ready to devote that time and energy, it kind of just sits on the back burner.
Hey, Rob, I want to focus on Sports Talk 1240. Give us an understanding of how long has it been on air, and explain your practice of the rotating guest hosts. Did you come up with this concept to keep the on-air talent fresh and yet unpredictable?
WGBB is a unique station in that they lease airtime to hosts. So meaning most radio stations hire talent, they sell ad time to pay the bills and so forth. GBB is different in that they have a contract with the Chinese radio network that they air Monday through Friday, and that basically is most of where their revenue comes from. On the weekends is where they lease airtime. So they charge hosts for airtime, and those hosts of the shows then go out and get sponsors for their show to help pay for the airtime. So I had done this back for actually the first show I ever hosted was called the Beavers Backstop Radio Show. And it was a friend of mine who was on the Beavers softball team that I played on, and we were just messing around half an hour every week talking about our softball team. It was really just fun. But at the time, I thought this was kind of interesting. So then I went and bought airtime to host Sports Talk 1240 in January 2007 is when it first aired. Boomer Esiason was our first guest. And through the 7 weeks of that show, I'd gotten Mike Bossy and some other guys, and I said, wow, this is amazing. I'm able to get these guests. This is before Twitter and Facebook were really ways to reach out to people. So I kind of got hooked on it, but it was kind of costly to pay for the airtime. So what I did was WGBB at the time did not have a website. I had some background in web design. I got to know the station manager. So basically I started to consult for the station, doing things like helping them sell airtime, developing the website for the very first time, keeping it up to date and maintaining it. Part of what my payment was discounted airtime in exchange for that. So what I had done with that discounted airtime is I started hosting New York Hockey Talk every week. But I found it became, again, very difficult to do the type of show that I wanted to do, where there's a lot of research involved when you have guests on asking them questions, and it started to become a lot. So what I decided to do was start this. At the time, it was called Sports Radio New York, which was a network of shows that we would rotate each week. There were people with different sports talk shows in the area. I'd let them come on and do their show. I would podcast it and put it on the Sports Radio New York website, and then charge them at a discounted rate than what GBB would charge, and they would only have to host maybe, say, once a month, so it'd be a little bit more affordable. So we started doing this for about 2 years, but I found all the different shows became a little confusing, so I just decided to go with one show called Sports Talk 1240. Same concept where we're alternating show hosts, but at least it's one show name. So when we go to promote it and so forth, it's a little less all over the place. We just have one single show. So we've been doing that since about 2010, and it's been really successful. We've had a lot of hosts that are just younger guys coming out of school looking to break into business and make a name for themselves. We have some older guys that just enjoy getting on the radio and talking sports that only need to do it once a month. Some of my hosts come on 2-3 times a month, depending on month to month. So it's a kind of thing where it isn't overly burdensome for the hosts who generally have other jobs. It isn't overly expensive because they're not hosting every week. And then I offer all the extras in terms of helping podcast the show and promoting it on all of our social media and so forth. So it's kind of been a win-win for everyone involved. And I really enjoy doing it. Sometimes I still get on and host from time to time. Generally nowadays I spend more of the time behind the scenes recording shows, promoting it, updating the website, things of that nature, helping some of the guests, some of the hosts book guests when I can. And we've been credentialed for Mets and Islander games, so we've had an opportunity to go and sit in the press box for some games and report on games. So it's really just been a lot of fun. And like I said, everyone that's been involved with it has enjoyed it. And it's been fairly successful. Like I said, we've been doing it since 2007, full-time since maybe 2008 or 9. And it's been on Sunday nights from 8 to 10 now. You can catch it on, of course, WGBB 1240 AM on Long Island. I also do some work for the radio station that we're soon actually going to be upgrading the streaming server and the website for WGBB, so you'll be able to catch it there as well. We have a webcam in the studio, so there's a lot of little extra things that we have that your typical podcast might not be able to offer. So, again, it's been a lot of fun, and we hope to continue doing it for years to come.
That's great. That's great. I think I have 2 shameless plugs that I'm going to throw in there. Since you do rotating guests, I think there's going to be one time, I don't know when, maybe before the summer, that Baseball Beer and Barbecue decides to just magically make an appearance on a Sunday night. We won't be talking New York sports, but we're going to talk, everything all over the place. So I guess our people will talk to your people about this.
Okay, we'll see what we can do there. We can see what we can do.
Yeah, and the second shameless plug I want to mention, my show, Late Night Parents, is going to debut today on 1240 WGBB, and I want to tell you about the overall hospitality that I've received from you and from Jeff Lowe. Second to none. Want to thank you guys for the support and willing to work with me and, through scheduling and days and everything else like that. So another shameless plug for the management team at 1240 WGBB.
Yeah, we do what we can. We want to see shows that join on. We want to see them be successful. So we want to do whatever we can to help promote the show and help you guys get sponsors to stay on the air. So that's, like I said, we don't just want shows coming in, paying, and leaving. The ideal situation is where we help shows be successful and get sponsors to be able to stay on the air with us. Gotcha.
Well, Rob, we're about to close this out. Where do our listeners find you? Where can they listen to you? If people are interested about the movie, the documentary, tell us best ways to find you out there in the interweb.
Well, the documentary, you can go to beaversoftballdoc.com or beaverballdoc on Twitter. I don't really tweet from that account, but beaversoftballdoc.com, you can check out the documentary. sportstalk1240.com. Everything there you need, all of our social media accounts, all of our past shows and articles, host bios and so forth, upcoming shows, past shows, everything about Sports Talk 1240. You can visit sportstalk1240.com for all that. I'm on Twitter, Rob Cole, WGBB, and that's really it. Those are the 2 sites, sportstalk1240.com and beaversoftballdoc.com.
Rob, thanks so much.
Thanks, Ted. I look forward to meeting you. We've exchanged a lot of texts, and this is actually the first time I think we've actually spoken, but I'll have to meet you soon down at the studio one of these Saturdays.
You got it. Talk to you
Ted.
soon.
Thanks, guys.
We've had a very lucky show because we've had 2 really good guests on so far, and I'm just some schlub. I've still got Todd muted, so he can't talk. I should talk badly about Todd at this point. But anyway.
Do it.
I unmuted Todd. But, yeah, we've been really lucky with the 2 guests we've had. Rob was fantastic. And
yes.
Ted, congratulations on that gig. That's going to be awesome.
No
doing
kidding.
From a studio. Yeah. That sounds like a pretty sweet thing. I'm not envious at all. Jerk Ted. But
well, you heard the shameless plug. You heard it.
There's no shameless plugs on this show. I could talk about whatever and plug myself. We're friends. There's no shameless plugs. You can plug whatever you want to plug. Well, that sounded weird. That's
all
not what I
shameful
want.
plugs.
Hey.
You guys talked about your little earlier.
I know.
Catching everybody
he was
up.
Talking about. He was, last night, Todd, he was talking about, thank you so much, and then next thing you know, the plug came, and I was like, hey, whoa. I thought that was
it. Exactly. Not on the down low anymore, is it, gentlemen?
Catching everybody up to date, important news, finals in the women's French Open. Serena Williams lost the first set 5-7. She is down in the second 3-5.
Wow.
So
Did you see any of her play in the semis? She just looked off.
The thing is, though, and I don't know if Ted has a say in this because I don't know how much he watches it. The French Open had so many rainouts that the guys had to play 4 straight days, and the women now are playing 4 straight days. That's high-intensity tennis 4 straight days.
Yeah,
I mean, I play high-intensity tennis, Ted has muted himself because he doesn't even want to talk about this, but I play high, quote-unquote, high-intensity tennis for me, 1 day for an hour. Yeah, exactly, 4 straight years, yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine playing that level of tennis 4 straight days. I mean, it's got to take something out of you, right? And I just hope that if Serena does lose this finals, and Muguruza she's an up-and-coming player. She plays with power. She's really good. She's the 4th seed. She's going to be a good player for a long time. I just hope. And I don't think Serena's going to do this because does she have some opinions? Does she quote unquote act out on the court? Yeah, maybe to some people, but how many times does she really say, "Oh, they got lucky"? She hardly ever says that when she loses,
no.
right? So I mean,
she's not going to.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
She's not going to say it's 4 straight days. Because they both are out there 4 straight days. Yeah,
exactly.
They're both out there 4 straight days. I mean, but like you said, Serena's what? Is she like 8 years older? I mean. That's
actually I don't even know. If she's, yeah.
I mean, that's a big difference, and it's cold too, and that makes a big difference, especially when you get a little older. I mean, and for tennis, she's older. I mean, that's how it is. But I really hope she comes back. That bums me out. I was like, but
yeah, I mean, she could easily break and go.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
obviously this match is not over by any stretch of the imagination. I type in Muguruza and she's 6 feet tall. I mean, she is born in, according to Wikipedia, 2016. So she's very, very young playing out there. I mean, she was just born this year. Really, really amazing. She is 22. So she's what, 13 years younger than Serena?
Wow.
So I mean, this is a player we're going to be talking about for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Ed, you can come back whenever you want. I'm just saying. So there he is. So yeah, and Todd had an interesting text to both of us yesterday when he said Dan Le Batard's father decided that he was now going to think the Penguins were going to easily win the Stanley Cup after they were up 2-0 at home. They won the first 2 games at home. Oh my gosh, it's not like they won them on the road.
I mean,
go ahead.
Los Pingüinos versus the Tiburones is what he said. So he's watching his own version of the NHL. He's
Dan
hilarious.
Levitar's father Spanish? I mean, where did that
get out of here?
Why was he?
Dan Le Batard thinks his father is an alien. I think so. His father's hilarious.
Le Batard, if that's his real name, which I doubt. Le Batard, that's not even Spanish, right? That's French.
He is the bastard, as he has proclaimed himself. But Dan, not his dad.
His name is probably Smith. It's probably Dan Smith. And he's like, I got to change my name to Le Batard and then throw away my vote for the Hall of Fame. No, I'm sure he's a good, guy or whatever, but I don't know. Talking about Dan Le Batard's dad. Nobody talks about my dad, which I have a take on a little bit of conversation about my dad when we talk about Ali more in a second.
Okay.
So, and we'll move on from that. So we're going to get into baseball. And before we get into baseball, we hit on it a little bit with Ali as far as the greatest of all time. When somebody says the greatest, you think Muhammad Ali. Because, I mean, he kind of called himself that. He was the greatest salesperson in the world. He was maybe the greatest heavyweight. That's debatable. Was he a great fighter? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but you can't compare Ali to Joe Louis even because it's a different era. And Ali did lose. He did. Even when he came back, he lost. So it wasn't like at the time he fought, he was unbeatable. Did he lose, as Todd pointed out? Was it 48 months? Is that what it was? I mean, that's crazy.
43.
43. I mean, you're losing in his prime. He lost that. So when you're talking about him fighting a lot more times and having a better record, and we're not going to get into semantics as far as, well, is Ali the greatest heavyweight of all time? I mean, that's really just opinion. Ted has muted himself, I guess. His dog had an opinion about Muhammad Ali. I'd love to hear. So, but anyway, I do want to, Ted, if you could unmute yourself. It looks like Serena has one. It's now 5-4, but I don't know if Muguruza is on serve. I'm unable to watch it. Just check the score. So,
Yeah.
ESPN has done a study of the most famous athletes currently playing in their sports, the top 100. I don't know if have you guys seen this?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
Okay. So, and they do it based on, it's a scientific study. It's not like, oh, this guy's most famous. I mean, it's based on followers on social media. It's based on their success in the sport. A lot of stuff has gone into this. So, of the top 10, how many do you think are soccer players?
7.
2.
5. So, and of the top 10, how many do you think are baseball players?
0.
None.
None. Absolutely none. In fact, the first player, there are 2 tennis players, I will say, and this makes me feel better about the world than the potential of a Donald Trump-led United States, because 2 of the top 10 are tennis players. Federer and Nadal. Actually, Djokovic doesn't come in until 16, and Sharapova is 18. Tiger Woods still up there. He's number 7. We have a cricket player who's number 8. Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't think that's any surprise. I mean, great soccer player. The guy could be a model if he didn't play soccer. I mean, he's number 1. LeBron James, world number 2. LeBron James.
Wow.
Then, Lionel Messi, then Neymar, and then Federer are the top 5. Kevin Durant, not Steph Curry. Kevin Durant comes in at number 6. And the cricket player is, I'm sure I'm going to butcher his name, it's Virat Kohli. So moving up beyond the top 10, number 13 is Phil Mickelson. Phil Mickelson, 13. Nothing against Mickelson, but that's the second golfer we have in the top 13. Right. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even then you get Gareth Bell, you get Ozil, who plays in the Premier League. I mean, you have other Wayne Rooney. You have other people who play soccer. So soccer obviously is the dominant force on the planet.
Who comes first, an NFL player or an MLB player, if you have the list in front of you?
I have absolutely.
I'm guessing a baseball player.
No, I'm thinking NFL.
Ronda Rousey's 23.
Wow.
There are a lot of basketball players before anything. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is 26. Okay, here's the top ranked. Let me see if this is correct. It's kind of surprising, actually. So there looks like
Tom Brady would be NFL.
Yeah. Who would you think would be the top ranked NFL player in the world, Ted?
I'm going to say, here's my 2 choices: Mr. Brady since he's recently retired, I was going to say Peyton Manning, but then my second choice would be Russell Wilson.
The number 32 most famous athlete in the world is Cam Newton, and that is the first NFL. Yeah.
I was going to say Cam. Cam.
I'm surprised, but that's cool. I guess Peyton was right. He is the face of the NFL.
He is, yeah. Peyton comes in at 38. He's number 2. Odell Beckham is number 3.
Wow. 40. Jeez, that's amazing.
Then
after 2 seasons.
Then Russell Wilson.
Nuts.
Then Tom Brady.
Wow.
So,
jeez.
Yeah, that's. I mean, but number 41 most famous player is a tennis player. Guess, Todd, I'll throw this at you. You'll get it wrong because I would have gotten it wrong. Number 41 most world famous athlete currently playing is a tennis player. Who do you think it is?
Venus Williams.
It's Sania Mirza.
I got that wrong. I got that wrong.
She's the doubles player for Martina Hingis.
Maybe she does a lot of. Maybe she does a lot of endorsements or something, and that's.
Well,
I mean, seriously.
I don't know who that is. Let's see who it is. And I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to see what she looks like. I mean, that shouldn't have anything that. Okay, well, here's.
No, I know what you're saying.
No, here's an important thing. She's from India. So I think that goes. She is an attractive lady, but she's from India, and I think that has a lot to do with it. So
I'm sure that makes a difference. Yeah. So who's the face of baseball? Is it Trout or?
Well, baseball. What is that? Is that a sport? Do they play it? You think that would be a little bit more popular? I'm still searching. which may explain why we get 3 people who are in prison who listen to this show. Baseball, what is that? I'm assuming it's Trout or Harper, Bryce Harper.
And that'll probably be Ichiro. While you're looking for that, Ichiro.
That's sad that you have to go. Marshawn Lynch is number 61, by the way.
Ichiro is having a fine season for the Marlins.
Okay.
Which is very interesting.
Number 71 is a baseball player.
Yes.
Bryce Harper. And number 73 is Mike Trout.
Wow. Interesting.
Yep.
Neck.
Guess who the number 3, and we'll move on after with this list after I say, guess who number 3 is at number 85?
Baseball player, I assume?
It's a baseball player, yeah.
Buster Posey. Why not?
Has to be Matt Harvey. Well, at least in his own mind, he thinks.
It's Robinson Cano at number 3.
Really?
Robbie Cano.
Yeah, Robbie Cano. And just to catch everybody up to date, Muguruza has won the French Open. She wins it 7-5, 6-4 over Serena. Oh. So, hello world, welcome to Muguruza, because she will now be a huge name in tennis for several years to come. So, moving on to baseball a little bit, David Wright, how Ted, you're the Mets fan, how much does losing David Wright for 6 to 8 weeks affect the Mets?
It affects his leadership, the leadership, dugout, that type of stuff. Seeing what part he's going to play, because he's one of the people that's holding things together. He's one of the people that when Harvey went off the rails a few weeks ago and didn't want to speak to the media, he held his feet to the fire. Now, that's important. Now, David Wright on the field, totally different player from, at the start of his career, with his skills and the disease and everything that's going on. What you get out of Wright is what you get out of him. The fans were hoping, WFAN was hoping maybe 100, 110 games. Chances are probably won't even get that. This is what you've signed, and he's on the books, I think, for the next 6 years, 5 or 6 years. So is it going to hurt? Yes, it's going to hurt. The other people have to step up? Of course they have to step up, but it's not like we didn't know this. When you look at history and when you look at other athletes that have had similar diagnosis. So he's a fighter. He's going to be there, but he's going to be there in a different capacity.
And
just that's it. Go ahead, Todd.
No, I was going to say no disrespect to David Wright, and then, of course, people immediately diss him. But seriously, no disrespect to him. But he is the only player in Major League Baseball who is listed on the roster as third base /DL. Like you said, this is going to happen every year. And he's the prime example of this, unfortunately, seriously, unfortunately for him and for the Mets. But, yeah, you get, when we've talked about this a few weeks ago, you get these huge contracts, and then basically what you wind up with is a part-time player and a really, really, really expensive cheerleader. And but they've got to gamble, because not everybody is like that. You do get occasional players who, maybe they'll miss 10 games a season as they age, as opposed to, 50. So it's a gamble, and they've got to take it. It's really unfortunate for Wright, but man, it's just, at this point you just have to realize, and I'm sure the Mets do, it's like, okay, so who's going to take David's place? I'm sure they talk about it in the off season. Who do we have ready that can play 60 that we can plug in? You have to with Wright, and it really sucks for him. It sucks for the Mets fans, but it's just, my God, when I saw that, it's like, gee, I wondered when this was going to happen. It's crazy.
Hey, just one other thing I want to add in. You look at either corner. You got Duda, who's out, who's been out. So first and third, your supposed big bats, they're both out.
Yeah, but you've got that beast Loney at first now. My God, guy has like slightly over 100 homers in 11 seasons. I mean, he's a
crazy
monster.
Power. Absolutely crazy power.
Crazy power last night is like, man, he smoked that frickin' ball.
Yeah. He gets on these runs where he'll hit 2 and 3 games, and then he won't hit one for 4 months.
Yeah.
So, and I'm almost not even joking. So the Mariners lost Felix Hernandez. I'm the Mariners homer here. He's out for 2 weeks. I don't think this really affects the team that much. He's a pitcher every 5th day. He's had his ups and downs this year. I think if anything, this might help him because it just allows him to rest. It's a calf injury, not an arm injury, so it's not anything long-term to worry about. Coy Seager last night beat the Braves by himself, basically hit 3 home runs. So the Dodgers won 4-2. He hit 3, and Trice Thompson, who, if you know anything about the Thompson clan, it's a pretty talented group. Clay's his brother. He hit the other home runs, so 2 rookies accounted for 4 home runs, and the Dodgers beat the Braves 4-2. Seager's one of those young shortstops in a class. Lindor, Correa, it's Bogarts. It's amazing the group of young shortstops we have nowadays in Major League Baseball. It's crazy. So I've already given you guys the trivia. I do want to say the 4th most popular player in the world for baseball, Miguel Cabrera, followed immediately by Tanaka. So, and then Albert Pujols is after that. So Ichiro's getting closer to 3,000. I honestly haven't checked. Last week he was 40 away. He's had a really good season actually this year. He should be able to get to 3,000 this season if he gets to play enough and doesn't get injured. If you guys had a team and you had a young Ichiro, even before he became a Mariner, he's a Hall of Famer, and he should go in as a Mariner, I'll say that. But if he was a young Ichiro and a young Pete Rose, which one would you choose?
I'd take Ichiro.
Knowing what we know now?
Well, no. Just based on can they both hit? Yeah. But, there's other things that go into it. Pete Rose, obviously.
Ichiro.
Yeah. He's got the arm.
Hands down.
Yeah.
And I guess anybody who didn't make the argument, I would say this. Imagine Ichiro on those Reds teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
And that's no disrespect to Rose's talent as a ball player. Seriously, you guys know, anybody who listens know I'm not a big fan of Rose. But on the field, heck of a player. But, man, Ichiro's the same hitter, basically. Doesn't walk as much, but has got a cannon, especially when we're talking young. Jeez, man. And a very smart base stealer. He was like the highlight for the Marlins last night when the Mets pasted him. He steals second easily, takes off, steals third. I know a lot of people can run on Syndergaard, but still. This guy's 42. And he's still playing like this. So, yeah, Ichiro, hands down, man. Hands down.
Yeah. And being a homer again, the Mariners were down 12-2 in the 6th inning 2 nights ago and came back and won 16-14 over the Padres.
Did you guys know that? Season.
Yeah,
I saw that.
They scored 7 runs with 2 outs. And they had 7 straight singles to score 7 runs, basically, is how it happened. So,
doing it the hard way.
Yeah, it's let's get down 12-2. Of course, it was against the Padres. I'm not even sure. Does it count if you win against a AAA team? I don't know if that really counts.
It's in the record book. It counts.
It is. It's in the record books. That's correct. It's like one of those, Satchel Paige was pitching against these barnstorming teams. So anyway, the standings currently, we have the Orioles and the Red Sox tied. The Orioles are 0.003 of a percent. It doesn't really matter. They're tied for the AL East lead at this point. And the Blue Jays are playing a lot better. They've won 4 straight. They're 2.5 back. The Yankees, even after their horrendous start, 6.5 back, only 4 under 500. And then the Royals and the Indians, basically, the Royals lead by a half game because they've played one more game than the Indians. Again, for everybody listening in Cleveland, we'll be there in August to do a live show, Baseball Beer and Barbecue from somewhere, some random bar. And then the Rangers beat the Mariners last night, so they're up by a game. The Astros playing better lately. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're behind by 7. and the Angels are also behind 7. The NL East is a weird thing because it's like the Mets get the lead and they lead by 3, and then 2 weeks later the Nationals lead by 3. I feel like this is going to be going all season long. Both teams are going to make the playoffs because one of them is going to be in the wild card, but it's going to be a crapshoot whoever wins that division, right, Ted?
Oh, definitely. And like I said, being the homer, you got to win the division. You can't mess around with this wild card playoff. You got to win the division, and that's what. Of course, all the division leaders and the folks that are closely second in the wild card are thinking, because wild card is a crapshoot. But I will say this much. It's interesting to be able – I feel like a kid again, because when I used to check the standings in the newspaper growing up, of the Mets from way back when in the 80s. Nowadays, you do it online – and it's just as fun because you want to find out what happened last night. Who did this? Who won? Who was the winning pitcher? And for me, that's the fun part of, I like the fact that the Mets are, they do have the Nationals on their back the whole season because it doesn't allow them to take their foot off the pedal.
Yeah, that's a good point. And run differential, the Red Sox are plus 68. They lead. That's pretty good. They lead the American League. The Mariners actually next with plus 56. Mariners actually lead the major leagues in home runs. But I didn't make that up. That's crazy, but that's true. And then the Cubs are playing okay. They're doing all right. The Pirates are 4 games over 500. They've played 54 games. They're 4 games over 500, and they're 10 back in the loss column, and they're in second place. The Cardinals are 11 back. Pirates are 9.5 back, and the Cubs are 38-15, 23 games over, plus 140. So they've more than doubled run differential for anybody else. And then the Giants lead the Dodgers. Giants having, of course, it's an even year, so the Giants are having a really good season. It'll be interesting to see how much losing Hunter Pence affects them. Probably won't affect them at all. They're 13 games over 500, and the Dodgers in second place, 5.5 back. The problem is they are way back compared to the Mets or the Nationals, so they would not be able to make the playoffs, or the Pirates for that reason. They're actually basically tied in the loss column with the Cardinals. So, and everybody else plays in the National League West, and continues to play baseball, it appears. So that's the standings. So I think at this point, it would be in poor taste to talk about the Cincinnati Zoo incident because, greater things have happened and we've lost Muhammad Ali. I do want to talk about the Cincinnati Zoo incident as a person that likes animals next week, I think, but because there may be more to come out of this. But Muhammad Ali, you guys had some interesting points earlier, especially about the Vietnam War. At a young age, my dad is a Southerner. He's a white Southerner. He doesn't dislike other races. It's just he was bred to be a white Southerner, and he was born in 1941. And for some reason, of course, he never really liked Muhammad Ali, but for some reason, I knew at a young age intuitively that what Muhammad Ali did with the Vietnam War, even though I wasn't born yet, was the right and good thing to do. And politically, obviously, my father and I have never aligned. I'm liberal. I think I mentioned this on the show before, but he used to say, "Oh, who's your favorite football players?" And I would say, because I was a 49ers fan when I was very young, I'd say John Montana and Jerry Rice. And he was like, "Oh, why are your favorite players always black?" And I said, "I didn't even know Jerry Rice was black. He wears, red and gold for all I know." So it's it's never been a thing. But I knew at a young age that what Ali did was the right thing to do. Now, I do have one of my personal heroes is Malcolm X. I do have some qualms with how Ali reacted to Malcolm X when Malcolm X left, the
Nation of Islam.
Nation of Islam. Thank you very much. I was going to say Black Muslims because some people call them that there, but Nation of Islam. I mean, Ali was still kind of devout to to the leader of that group for some reason, who sounds a lot like Yoda. Not Ali, but the leader of that group. Have you ever noticed that? It's like, this guy.
Elijah Muhammad.
Elijah Muhammad. Oh, this is how he sounds. I'm not making that up, but it's interesting. Anyway, Nation of Islam, I mean, people can think what they think. I thought that the reason Malcolm X left was because he said, it's not about race, it's about money, and he discovered that when he went on his Hajj to... But anyway, I'm getting off subject. But as a huge fan of Malcolm X, I had some issues with how Ali kind of treated Malcolm X after he left that. So that's my personal distaste for Ali. That's the only thing that comes up. But as far as anything else, Muhammad Ali, as you guys have pointed out, stood for what he said he stood for. And this day and age, oh my God, we need more of that, right? And that's not going to happen because people, this guy, you know what? He's saying all this stuff. We don't accept that anymore. It doesn't matter what color you are. We don't like it. So it's just sad. It's sad that this guy, who even when he got Parkinson's disease and still was a leader, we need more Muhammad Alis in our lives. And I will say, on behalf of my dad, he never went to, this guy's Cassius Clay. He called him Ali too. So at least he came around to that as well. But you guys, more thoughts on Muhammad Ali?
I think we
hold on,
both.
Okay, let's go to Todd.
Ted decided to go Megatron for this important segment. That's great.
Megatron. Ted will start his computer or something.
I tweeted last night after this came up, and you may have seen it or not, but to me it kind of summarizes, for me, Ali, and I just tweeted, the legacy of Muhammad Ali isn't how many people he knocked down, it's how many he lifted up. And, we're talking about recognition of sports and athletes and all the rest of it, world recognition of who they are. And like I said, he was recognized as a humanitarian, which is an odd journey for this kid out of Louisville who got into boxing because he wanted to beat up someone because he stole his bike. What a journey he was on. And he was not a perfect person. He's certainly the first person to admit that. Like you said, his issues with Malcolm X, and in a Playboy magazine interview way back in the day, he advocated that if a black man slept with a white woman, he should be killed. And same thing if a black woman slept with a white man, because it was very adamant about, again, under the leadership of Elijah Muhammad, that races shouldn't be together, and he grew from that, obviously grew from that, and just as his beliefs that we're all God's children, doesn't matter what you call God, and just and there's so much to him. It's the humanitarian aspect is obviously the most important thing. Him being called by Ramsey Clark to negotiate the release of hostages from Iraq in 1990, again, because he had this cachet as a very prominent person. And of course, it didn't hurt that he was a very prominent Muslim. But Muhammad Ali goes and gets 15 people out of Iraq that Saddam Hussein was holding as human shields. The fact that they thought, this is the guy who'll do it, and he did. Like, who does that? What athlete these days can you think of that would be able to pull that off? And just his poetry. I'm not going to go through the long, there's so many. God, that could be a 2-hour show, just things that Muhammad Ali said. But, the ones that stuck with me, of course, everyone knows, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. But the part that most people don't remember is he followed it up with, you can't hit what your eyes can't see. So even that was part of Ali's poetry. Just an amazing, creative, deep thinker. Again, he goes so far beyond boxing and sports, and this is why, to me, when I read this, is like I was just like wired, and I was a huge fan of Ali, but more so, like Ted mentioned, who didn't cry watching him light the cauldron in the Olympics? Man, this is a person who man, he's going to be missed. In some ways, he has been missed because of the devastation of Parkinson's, but the millions and millions of dollars he's raised for Parkinson's, and just there's so much to say about Ali. It's and if to the and there are people out there who there are Ali haters still to this day, and it's like that's unfortunate for you. That's unfortunate for you that you're unable to open your heart to other people as he was.
So some will say, or the book, his good book, is now written. The 4 marriages, 9 children, that might be frowned upon. But the one thing I remember is, as the athlete, not as the humanitarian, but who was better at talking trash? You have everyone nowadays that emulates him, whether they're doing a shoot or whatever you want to call it. They want to have that razzle-dazzle about it. His legacy will live on. Like you said, Todd, with you staying up, towards the wee hours of the morning watching ESPN, this is the one time we'll say ESPN versus the 4-letter network, because, they did the right thing. There's so much that we've said and what he's meant to in the media and to pop culture. This wasn't a guy like our athletes of today, and I'm sorry to take a shot. They're concerned about selling tennis sneakers and apparel. They wouldn't take a stance on anything. What was that one comment about our good friend, another icon, MJ, who we love so much? He said, Republicans buy sneakers too. It's you gotta, we love him. We'll always love him because he did take that stand. Everything wasn't correct, but he took that stand. Where nowadays, these guys, it's all about the dollar. He was like, hey, I got to sell this. Hey, I got to put my signature on that. Hey, I'm going to, it's bigger than that. And that's why we say, I was speaking with my wife this morning, and I said he was bigger than boxing, the sport of boxing. And she said, what do you mean by that? I said, most of these athletes, they're measured on their skill set. But when the skill set starts to decline, they focus on the talk show circuit, or they try to latch on to do that next thing. He didn't have to be, he was his own brand. He was his own person. He stood by it. And like I said, in the waning years when his speech was taken from him, he always stood as like that symbol of hope. And that's why, we can go back and we look at the Olympics, and we go back and we look at certain situations. And we talked about the hostage situation. Who else could go in there and negotiate this? That's when you get to the point of being that global icon where people see you, and I don't care who you are, you stop what you're doing.
Yeah, it's very true. That's a great point, Ted. Really, it's a super great point. So, and we'll end the show not on that, but I was just curious about net worth, about how much Ali's net worth was because of the day he fought versus like Floyd Mayweather. According to sources, Ali's net worth was $50 million. That's a lot of money. Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s net worth is between $400 and $650 million. Of course, he ran his business differently. He promoted himself, which was a smart move. Jerry Seinfeld's net worth $820 million. Guess how much Julia Louis-Dreyfus is worth?
900? 600?
$3 billion.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
She's got some production companies. She should run for president. She's qualified.
The funny thing, if anybody hasn't seen Veep, this part of the program is sponsored by Veep. It's really, really good show. But no, I mean, she inherited a lot of money because of her grandfather.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, $3 billion. That girl can act whenever and however she wants to. So anyway, Ted, you want to bring up something about John Clayton?
Oh, just want to let you know this much. I've always used to, love watching John Clayton or reading about John Clayton. And I want to tell you, ever since I started doing this show, and even before that, when you guys invited me on Nikki X Happy Hour, and there was so many references
into our lives lovingly.
Referencing
cold in the morning.
Referencing ESPN 710. And I'm like, what the hell are these guys always talking about ESPN 710? I said, it's only ESPN New York. Only things happen in New York. They don't happen outside of New York. So one day I turned to ESPN 710 and I went through the list of hosts and I said, okay, this is bogus. This is bogus. This is bogus. I was like, what are these guys talking about? And I said, oh my God, John Clayton has a show on Saturdays. I said, wow, this is pretty cool. I mean, only station you can catch him live. And I said, wow, all right. So I've been listening to him. I never told you guys this. I've been listening to him religiously to learn more about Seattle sports so that I'm in tune to what you guys are talking about. So, and the one thing I kept saying to myself was, why this guy is so great on Saturdays, 1 to 4 Eastern, 12 to 3 Eastern. I said, why doesn't he have a show, a regular show? Lo and behold, John Clayton, now starting on Monday, will have a morning show, which will run 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time, and that's 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. our time, Eastern. And it's just good to see someone dedicated to local sports when everyone is so focused on being national. Everyone wants to be, hey, that global brand. He's focused on Seattle sports, and I would love if we had someone like that out here in New York, where he's calling into other shows. He's totally ingrained in that, and I wanted to commend him and commend you guys and say thank you for introducing me to ESPN 710 and to the J and G show that's leaving.
Justin and G. Yeah.
Yeah, different types of personalities. I'm sure they're going to move on and do other things, but John Clayton is John Clayton. When you can get him 6 days a week, that's a big thumbs up.
And I don't know if he's going to continue doing the Saturday show. I think it maybe just it's interesting because he always does a 7:15. Can you tell I listen to a lot of 710 ESPN Seattle?
Yes.
Anyway,
yes,
10:15. John Clayton's on Brock and Salk, and then he does he does an afternoon show with them as well. Calls in to that. But if you want to, Ted, you should listen to all the shows. Are just fantastic. They're really good hosts, awesome shows. To me, and I'm a homer. But that is of the places I've lived. I've lived in Cleveland, Ohio, a lot of sports talk radio. I've lived in Seattle. I've lived in, Charleston. That is by far the best local sports radio network station that I've ever heard. It's amazing because the hosts are really good. You gonna interrupt me?
You can't be serious, Lee. You cannot tell me that the morning show on the Sports Animal
that I don't even
Knoxville
listen to. I can't listen to it. I have my radio. My radio is set to NPR. I do not listen to the Knoxville.
It's the worst damn thing ever. Oh my God.
It's awful. Yeah, but when I lived there, of course, I got lucky because not only did I get to know Brock Hewitt a little bit, but he's getting to be a big thing in college football. But he had the show on in the morning, and then Bob Gross has a show in the afternoon. Ted didn't mean to set me up for just doing a whole big promo for 710 ESPN Seattle, but it is awesome, and Clayton's really good. And the funny thing is, he's not even from Seattle; he's from Pittsburgh, really. So he has, that's where he got his. He's a lot older than people think, but that's really where he got his start covering the Steelers and so on and Pirates. He talks everything, and he always has the same first caller every show on Saturday. I don't know if you've noticed that, but he does that intentionally.
Yes.
And he mentioned this guy is just a random guy who will call in. He's good. He's knowledgeable. And I'm not going to say his name because I make people look it up. But it's funny when John Clayton goes on other shows. They're, oh, you're going to be on the show? Yeah. And you guys are going to hear about this person from Renton, right? And he's, oh, yeah. It's always the same call. John Clayton's a class guy. and that's why he's so well loved in Seattle. I think. He's a class individual. So yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad you're listening to that, Ted. I'm going to make you a Mariners and a Seahawks fan before you know it. You're going to move out to Seattle, where all the techies are. And be
I
like,
know.
oh, me.
Come on.
Exactly. I'm a Sounders guy. That's what I am. That's what Ted's going to say. So. Yeah, John Clayton's awesome. So, and it was a poll when I lived out there about who the most famous sports people were in Seattle, and he was number one. I mean, it was because it's John Clayton, and all the athletes were secondary. So, good guy. So I'll say that. But Ted, when's your show start on Sports Talk 1240?
12:40 a.m. WGBB. Show starts today, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. The debut.
1:30 p.m. Pacific, as we've just picked up a lot of that audio.
1:30 p.m. Pacific. But yeah, we're extending the brand. It's the same show, just it's really extending it a little bit. We're gonna do a little bit more New York stuff. But we're still going to have the folks that are educators. We're still going to talk technology. We're going to talk a little bit of sports. We're definitely going to talk about parenting issues. Today we will talk about disruptive children. We're going to have the company G Fuel. The CEO is going to be joining us from G Fuel because they became the proud sponsor for esports, and we're going to talk a little bit. One of our friends, Dave Thompson, is going to join us to give us a recap of Game 1, and then that's going to be a wrap for the first weekend. Just to let you know, the next show we're going to have is Dr. Michelle Reed is going to join us for most of the show, where we start to talk about Zika and get a better understanding of the pregnancies that are happening, and why so many women are showing up or becoming positive with Zika. We're going to talk the ramifications with the Olympics. So it's going to be kind of that same LMP feel, but we'll have local people in the studio with me that are from New York, and I can't wait for you guys to come on in a couple of weeks.
To bring the show down? Is that what you want us to be on? Because I can talk a lot. Hello, Ted. This is Lee from Tennessee. Let me tell you something about Donald Trump. No, I'm not.
Clearly, Ted does not want to work on Saturdays. He wants to get rid of the gig, so we can do that for you.
He's like, this is my second and last show. So, anyway, that's
it.
Yeah. So is there late night parents on Wednesday?
Oh, of course. That's the best thing about it. This Wednesday, nothing changes. Nothing changes this week
I feel
on
like you're breaking
parents.
up with me. When you say nothing's changing, I feel like you're breaking up with me.
Nothing changes. We're going to.
That you're seeing somebody else. That's cool. Go to the dance by myself.
No. This weekend, believe it or not, we're going to have. There's 3 different people that we're going to be talking with, but one in particular that I wanted to highlight is learning about your Muslim neighbors. That's going to be a segment that we're going to talk because of the rhetoric, the talk that's out there, the uneasiness. We're gonna talk about that, and that might be the entire show. But we're going to have a guest who's going to join us, and we're going to talk in depth about it, some of the stereotypes that person has run into, and kind of, and he's going to talk about his book, King of Peacocks, and he's also a filmmaker. So nothing really changes. It's just an additional day. It's still live. And, that's really it.
Well, it sounds like it's really an awesome opportunity, and I'm really glad you're getting that opportunity. I think it's going to be fantastic. So,
hey, Ted.
Yes,
Did you
sir.
tell the station? Did you tell the station manager that you only work blue? I wonder. I hope you brought that up.
Sure.
Yes.
Seriously, that's awesome. So happy for you, man. That's fantastic.
They were like,
Thank you,
Ted,
guys.
are you from New York? And he's like, no, I'm from Dayton. I'm like, all the greats are from Dayton. That's a topic for a different day. But you know, Martin Sheen from Dayton, Ohio. I just want to say that. A lot of people from Dayton. So that's our show. Anybody have any final words? Besides go Dayton Flyers. I was about to go
Hawks.
Should be. That's Kevin. I think he's trademarked that. Anyway, here's our outro.
The fans hoping to catch a little bit of the old-time religion right here, baby. With Junior stepping up to the plate. Here comes the stretch. And the pitch to Junior on the way. Swing and a fly ball hit to deep right center field. That baby is going to be fly away. The old-time religion lives. Junior does it. A 2-run home run.